Hi, welcome to the Diablo podcast. We are online at DiabloIncGamers.com. I am the host, Flux. I am joined this week by our godfather and IncGamers master, Rush.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about the Diablo console project a little bit. Hopefully not for about 6 hours, but there's been a lot of discussion and conversation about that. Why don't you talked about it a little bit on another podcast today, Paul, and how is you run the IncGamers site, which is, covers all kinds of gaming, consoles as well as computer games, yes?
Well, we used to do a lot of console stuff, but we don't anymore. As of last November, we stopped and we moved to PC only, just because I had enough of consoles.
Well, good. Diablo's good news for you then.
Well, yeah,
But
but there's a bit of a crossover in this one, which is why we kind of covered it in the show today, because obviously a lot of PC gamers are interested to see how it's going to transition onto the PS3 and PS4.
yeah, I was wondering especially because I mostly just cover the Diablo stuff and the Blizzard games a little bit, but you're obviously more in tune with the larger PC gaming, the whole ecosystem of online gaming,
Mm,
running a general gaming site. Funny how that works, right?
yeah.
So, we've seen the reaction of Diablo players and the community to it. What's been the larger reaction in the larger sense of gaming sites in general? Does anybody care or?
I think everyone who is looking forward to the PS3 and PS4 is pleased that it's going to turn up there. And based on the interview that was done shortly after the announcement, I can pretty much say it's going to move on to the Xbox as well. I think it's a pretty solid franchise to be moving on to the consoles. It's well known, and I think it's going to need the console's going to need something like that. I mean, the PS4 is moving closer to what a PC can handle as far as graphics and all that kind of jiggery pokery is concerned. So the gap's closed until the PC stuff keeps advancing forwards as it always does because it leads the way. But I think the PS4 needed something like this.
And you don't run a console gaming site. I would be curious if there are people who are like, oh, I like the Diablo idea, but I really only have a PS3 or an Xbox, and I'm not going to buy it for my computer. I don't think that's a real large market, but maybe Blizzard has tapped into this with their market research and realizes there's actually lots of people who would play this that don't have a PC that'll run it.
Yeah, I think so. I also think there's a lot of PC gamers that will pick this up for their PS3 or PS4 if they invest in one, just so they can do it. Dare I say it, offline with their friends in co-op on a sofa. Obviously, the experience is going to be very different from the PC because they've redesigned the interface as we've seen from the shots. So it will play differently, but based on the mechanics that they've put in with the dodge move, it could be a lot of fun. But I really guess we're going to have to wait and see how it actually plays.
Which is going to be pretty soon. They said they'll have demos at the Penny Arcade Expo show coming up, I think at the end of the March. So just like 4 weeks from now, people will see what it plays like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been probably further down the line than they've let on, and I kind of think about what happened with Jay when he left at the end of the year. And sort of my thinking is that maybe, they need to get somebody else in now that can bring the two projects together with console experience and PC experience. And maybe Jay just wasn't that guy. So there could be, more to it as far as the PlayStation project's concerned with Jay actually going. But I mean, we'll never know that. But yeah, it's interesting because they said that they're going to keep the versions, in tandem together. So if you get an update on the PC, you should also get an update on the console version.
Yeah, we should mention that one of the base. I mean, some of the basics. It's just there's not a. If someone hasn't read the news at all somehow, I mean, there's no mouse and you don't click. You don't. I always figured when they were talking about using a console for an ARPG, like for Torchlight or something, why can't they just make the thumbstick work like a mouse and it just makes a little cursor and you just click where that goes? But for some reason, that's just not how these games are ever done.
No, I mean,
So they have to redo everything. So actually, when you push the joystick, your character just moves in the direction you push the joystick.
but to be perfectly honest, I actually think that'll work pretty well. I do think it'll work quite well. I don't think that's going to be an issue. Where it becomes an issue, obviously, is mainly on the interface menus. But it looks like, based based on the shot that were put out last week that they're using some sort of radial menu system, which will basically you'll activate the menu and you'll just use the thumbstick to rotate round the radial menu, especially on the inventory and on the avatar on the paper doll, because there isn't a paper doll,
which
obviously.
doesn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's kind of like a 3D character render with the slots around it. So I'm guessing that you'll just basically use the thumbstick to move around the radial menu, then whack a button, and then do your jiggery pokery with your inventory. I don't think it's going to be that easy. It could still be a little bit fiddly, but it's a nice idea.
I like your jiggery pokery. That was definitely my first thought of it.
Yeah.
That's
But
that's one of those technical terms you use in game reviews, right?
oh yeah, all the tech terms we use on IncGamers.
Yeah. Do you have a jiggerypokery.com yet, or is that coming next year?
Oh no, that's registered years ago. We just haven't found
Yeah.
the right
Okay.
platform for it
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's currently camel porn, but we're working on that for the future. Okay. So something you just mentioned that I was wondering about, besides the jiggery pokery, is we don't know what Blizzard's doing and why they're doing stuff and such, and you wonder how much of the motivation for making this is, hey, we need to sell 5 million new copies of the game because the real money auction house is not making money. I mean, they would have made the console anyway, I'm sure, but we know nothing about if they're making $1 billion a day or nothing off of
Mm.
real money auction house stuff.
I,
And
I,
that was their whole plan for continued revenues, and maybe they're like, we need to really hurry the console because the real money auction house is not paying the bills.
but I mean, if you think about it, are they really hurrying the console? I mean, I think as you pointed out in your news
It
article,
would appear not.
yeah,
It's Blizzard, Paul. This is Blizzard.
but it has been has been hinted at since like 2010, so that's 5 years ago. So it's obviously been in the back of their brains even before the auction house stuff was even
2010 is not 5 years ago.
sort of whenever it was. What year are we in? I have no idea.
Exactly.
three
Well,
years
they
ago.
commented on
Sorry.
console right after the announcement. In 2008, I mean, I put this whole Jay Wilson quote. If we ever did a console, Diablo seems like a great thing because of the control scheme, etc. So that's one of the whole controversies we'll get into in a minute. But people thinking they've been making all these game decisions all along based on what will be
Mm.
console friendly.
Yeah, but I mean, even 3 years. I mean, we think about the auction house stuff that kind of came out of the blue. We don't even know how long that was planned. So, if
From the
you're
start, I think.
yeah, probably, but if you think about 3 years in the making for the console version, I think it's quite tricky to develop on the PS3 just because I think we touched on this in the Gamers one because of the way that the memory works in it, which is something that's changing in the PS4. But it's still a fair amount of time considering the game's actually being developed anyway on the PC. So all the art assets and stuff like that for most of the game it will be the same apart from the interface.
When I was up at Runic last year looking at Torchlight 2 before it launched, I may actually be more than a year and a half ago now. I can't keep track of dates any either, but he was talking to me quite a bit about the Xbox port they did, which obviously is relevant. It's an ARPG with a very similar control scheme, and I was very clear that they were not going to make Torchlight 2 for the Xbox based on what he said about making the first Torchlight for the Xbox
Mm.
because it was just technical nightmare. It sounded like he was just listing just thing after thing after thing that was incredibly hard to do, and the memory and the whole system's only got 512 megabytes of RAM, and it was just complete technical pain in the ass. And I don't know a damn thing about console development, so I mean I have no idea if the PS3 is more powerful or less than an Xbox, etc. But I was not at all surprised they didn't make a Torchlight 2 for the console, which they're not doing and haven't done. So I'm kind of surprised they're making. I just sort of figured Diablo 3 wouldn't work on the current generation of consoles,
Mm.
and apparently it will.
Well, I think I don't know how if we're going to see like two different versions because obviously the PS4 is getting closer to a PC. It works differently from the PS3, so I'm not sure if there's going to be like a PS3 well, there is a PS3 and a PS4 version, and I don't think the PS3 stuff works on the PS4 anyway. But how different those two are going to be, we don't know. Um, but yeah, I think it is a bit of a nightmare for developers when they're trying to. I mean, that's why when the console games release and you see it being ported to the PC, usually the PC version is just inferior to what it could have been, which is increasingly frustrating for PC gamers that are buying into like a big franchise, and then they buy the game and it's the textures ain't even that great. So I don't know. I think it's going to work well.
And there's a whole new untapped audience. I was looking at I mean, one of the main topics is will Diablo type of game work on a console? Will console gamers like it? And I mean, there's this whole stereotype of console gamers. They're just like, slack-browed, slack-jawed, mongoloid 14-year-olds who only play shooters.
Mm.
And that's for the most part true from what I understand. But I was one of them myself at one point. But I mean, I was looking at the top-selling Xbox and PlayStation 3 titles, and it's just, I mean, literally, actually, Xbox titles best-selling whenever is Kinect Adventures, but that came with the Kinect device bundles. So that doesn't really count, right?
Yeah.
Number two, three, four, eight, and nine are all Call of Duty games. Number five and seven are Halo games, and six is Grand Theft Auto 4.
Yeah.
And then there's like Gears of War and Battlefield 3, which are basically just Call of Duty games. And then the only thing that's not one of those kind of games is Skyrim and Assassin's Creed,
Mm.
which are, I mean, kind of like Tomb Raider kind of clones. Obviously, people have played those games more recently than that, but
The,
and then basically the PlayStation's the same thing. The top three all-time best-selling games on PlayStation 3 are Call of Duty 1, 2, and 3, and then more of the same kind of stuff, Assassin's Creed. So they're not hugely detailed. There's no ARPG comparisons.
yeah,
So
I think there's
are console gamers fundamentally different in some way, or are they just different kind of games that work best on consoles?
I just think there's things that work better on consoles than ours. If you think about it, I mean, as you listed there, you've everything is like FPS or third person. And then okay, so you think about okay, what other genres are there? Well, you've got strategy, RPG, point and click adventure, and so on. Um,
Well, real-time strategy, yeah, doesn't work. It doesn't exist at all on console, really.
yeah, but then you have games like XCOM, Enemy Unknown, which has done really well, and that was released on the Xbox, and that's like a turn-based strategy. So
Yeah.
it can be done, but then turn-based is slower pace. It's just menu clicking and positioning. So yeah, I mean, there's a gap in the market for it. I think Blizzard are right to go for it. I think if they can get it to work well, I think it'll do well. It'll sell well. And let's not forget, the original Diablo was I think was put out in the PlayStation originally,
Yeah, but I don't think that was, I mean, who knows what the sales figures were, but
but it worked.
yeah.
They did it.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, I'm just looking at these sales figures, and like over 3 or 4 million copies sold is a pretty big success for either the PS3 or the Xbox, and the best-selling ones are like 10 and 12 million copies,
Yeah,
and they sold 10 million copies of Diablo 3 for the PS for the computers. So I'm sure they're not thinking, well, we'll sell 500,000 copies and be happy. They got to be thinking, 5 million or something. I mean, multi-millions of copies.
I mean, I think the biggest hurdle that Blizzard have here is just the actual PC audience themselves. If the console gamers buy into all the comments that have been made about the game from the PC audience, then that could be problematic. Which goes back to the question, why the hell are they not fixing the PC stuff? People want to see it fixed.
Well, they fixed a lot of stuff in patches. I think a lot of people who complain haven't played the game since like June.
Yeah,
And it's like they just still remember or else they're just bitchy about changes that were made. And that's certainly a big issue with the whole console thing. Get to that in a second. But since the initial announcement, they clarified. I think you posted the news item that there's going to be no mixing of the PlayStation and the computer characters, or the economies, or the games.
yeah, that's
So you
right.
can't play your existing characters, and you can't play in a game with people on the console from your computer.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't make sense anyway. I mean, everything that was run through the PlayStation or Xbox is done through Xbox Live or the PlayStation Network. So there's no way that those two are going to hook up into BattleNet. And let's face it, I think console gamers will always be at a disadvantage over PC gamers anyway.
So those of us like myself who were hoping for an influx of 5 million fresh meat we could sell all our crap to in the auction house are out of luck.
Yeah, pretty
I was
much.
thinking, hey, because it's really hard to sell anything in the auction house because everyone kind of already has all the basic stuff now, unless there's a busy market at the top end, and like crafting materials sell pretty well. But like anything you find, if it's not 99.9% quality, you just can't even give it away because everyone else already got it themselves.
Mm.
And then we were hoping maybe all these console players will get on and buy, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, but
But as you say, it really wouldn't be fair with different control methods and different interfaces and everything.
I mean, I was never sure about what they were going to do with the auction house with the console version. I mean, they could probably rake it in if they managed to pull it off.
That's a whole question because I mean, people are often saying that's one of the main critiques about Diablo 3 since launch is that it's just impossible to self-find and then be successful at the highest level of the game. You just can't find the stuff. It's
Yeah,
everything is so specialized. You can find crap and sell it and get enough gold to buy the good stuff on the auction house. You don't need to put in real money to succeed, but you'll never find it yourself with what you want.
mm.
So they have to have an auction house in the console unless they do something radically to tweak the drop rates.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, it would be easier for them to tweak the drop rates, but then again,
I think that would be the end of the universe for the Diablo fans. The Diablo community would just be so pissed and say, "We've been bitching about the drop rate forever, and now you do it for the console, but not for us."
yeah, but I mean, this goes back again. The fact is that we have two audiences here that are going to want different things, and they both have to work differently to be successful. And I think you're never going to please. Well, I don't think you're going to please a majority of the players if some of the decisions that they may need to make for the console version are made. There could be a lot of pissed off PC gamers.
Oh, we don't see any of that now, so that would be a new thing.
They're
Well,
getting
the question, I mean, are they going to have an auction house? I can't imagine they wouldn't, but that kind of gets into the whole, I mean, for the console, but that gets into the whole issue of are console gamers different? And maybe you can say they're not or they are, but
well. Look,
it seems
the thing is,
it's like there's a more natural.
console gamers are
A console
used to
gamer is going to want
buying
to,
DLC though, so they're used to
yeah,
buying
yeah. That's
stuff.
I'm not even saying real money auction house. I mean, even just the gold auction house. Do console gamers want to sit and scroll through lists of items and buy stuff? You know, you're basically playing a word processing device at that point. You're playing Excel.
Yeah, but if thing is like if they bought the game, then they should know what they're buying into. So I think anyone who just buys it thinks they're just going to run around and mash stuff up. Probably won't get as much out of it as they should get out of the game.
Well, you could basically do that in Diablo 2, though. You know, in Diablo 1, you could basically find all the stuff you needed to succeed at the highest level of the game, and you really can't in Diablo 3, at least in the current version, at least in the PC version.
Yeah, yeah. I don't
I
know.
mean, success in the game is like 90% equipment, and 99% of equipment is auction house.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting to see if they change that, much less if they have a real money auction house. I mean, like, as you said, they have all these DLCs and map packs and everything else.
Well,
So people are used to spending money to extend their gaming experience on the console. I don't see that as a fundamental, hurdle.
no, I mean the only way to rectify it, as is quite right as you say, is tweak the drop rates. If they tweak the drop rates, then there's going to be a big outcry from the PC community. So I don't know if that's going to happen. I just don't know.
Okay, speaking of big outcries, the other big complaint is that there's going to be an offline mode in the console, and there's not
Yeah.
an offline mode in the PC, which was a big. Actually, that wasn't a sticking point. I was just reading some forum threads about that, and people have sort of, we ran a vote back in last August, August 5th last year. Sorry, August 5th, 2011, which was well before the game was released, and when they first announced the online only thing. And I'm looking at the vote totals right here. We had 8,000 votes, and 41% said it's fine, I'm online only, and then 17% said it's okay if it stops piracy hacking. So almost 60% of people had no objection at all. And then 22% said I don't like it, and only, much smaller percent were like I hate this, this is bullshit. So everybody's kind of like, they've reconstructed the history of it. They hated online only at the time. It's no, 80% of people were fine with the online only at the time, or at least didn't care enough to really object to it.
I think it.
But that was at the height of pre-launch fanboyism. This will be the greatest game ever, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong.
I think it's the principle of it being online only. I don't think people really care that much because they are usually online. I mean, next week, for example, we've got Sim City coming out. Okay, city building game that is online only. Okay, so it's
Is there even a multiplayer mode? I mean,
yeah, yeah, there is. It's basically that's why they've done it. It's so that your city can then sit beside other people, players' city, and then you can start an economy and a trade going between the other players. So effectively, there's a lot of people that sort of don't like the idea, but when you actually read their thinking behind why they're doing it, it makes a lot of sense why they're doing it because it actually
to
expands the
stop
game.
piracy.
No, no, I don't. I genuinely don't believe that this time. I do actually think it is because they want to make the game a lot more expanded than you just in your little sandbox world, putting up buildings. I think they want to make it a bigger experience. I think there is always the issue of piracy and DRM, and I think that's what pissed the Diablo 3 community off more than anything else on this. I think it was the fact that, okay, there's no real reason why you couldn't play through this in a single player. I mean, there was no real reason, in which case it is piracy, and maybe that's why piracy would be the main reason to stop it. And I think that's probably why the online only mode is on the PC and having it completely open for the PlayStation, where you can play single player, has just rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way.
Yeah, we kind of understand the technical issues. The other main thing with the PC was that they said if there's, TCP/IP kind of stuff or LAN support, that basically puts the code for the networking in the player's hands and makes it much easier for them to like reverse engineer hack Battle.net, which I have no idea if that's true or not. I'm not a programmer or a hacker, so who knows? But I mean that and the DRM were legitimate reasons to have it be online only. But of course they mentioned those like once ever in interviews, and every other one was about, enhanced multiplayer experience and people who created Diablo 2 characters and didn't realize they couldn't play them online because they were playing, single player characters by accident, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And at the time, I think I even talked to you about the time. We were like, that is such a load of crap. It's just admit why you're doing it and we'll go forward. Don't give us this song and dance, this PR stuff, right?
yeah. I mean, I think that was really stretching it quite a bit, and it frustrating because it kind of felt like they were treating you like an idiot. And sometimes some things that Blizzard post, they kind of don't really kind of understand their audience. I think it's been especially apparent a lot of blue posts recently, where they'll say something, oh yeah, but wouldn't it be cool because I love going in and slaying the demons from hell. It's like putting all this kind of um, sort of kiddie talk into their posts, and it's really, let's face it. I mean, most of us are older gamers. People who've grown up with the Diablo franchise are older. We kind of don't need to hear it.
Maybe that's why they want the console. They can get the 14-year-olds who aren't jaded and bitter about what it was when Diablo 2 17 years ago.
Yeah, maybe possibly. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I just think the community team are just a little bit out of touch. I mean, their intentions are all good and their heart's in the right place, but sometimes they just kind of don't understand maybe the audience as much better as good as they could do.
Well, I think Bashak understood the audience, and he tried to deal with people like as adults and use sarcasm, and that totally backfired. Everyone hated
No,
him,
no,
so
no, no,
he had to
no,
go back to
no,
WoW.
no, no, no. Rule one: don't use sarcasm in a forum.
Well, everyone loved Bashiak and Jay Wilson until May 15th, and then there was a rocky launch, and everyone hated them. So it wasn't. I think it was much less about what they did and much more about the game
Yeah.
they were the voice people for, the spokespeople for.
Well,
The other
you need
funny,
somewhere to vent your frustration, and that they're just targets basically.
yeah, like a little walking pinatas. The other funny thing about the online play and security is, of course, as you said, we'll be doing it through the PlayStation Network and not Battle.net. At least we assume so. We haven't really said anything about this yet. But of course, as you recall, the PlayStation Network was the source of the single largest data hack in global
Mm.
human history in 2011, when 75 million accounts were compromised and the entire service was down for a month while they repaired it and told you, oh, by the way, get a new credit card. So that's not necessarily the best precedent to set for a something, especially if it's like a real money auction house or something you have. Data security and character security and integrity is of utmost importance in a Diablo game because your items are your character. If you lose your items, your character is useless. You might as well just start from scratch.
Yeah,
Where it's not Call of Duty. Call of Duty you can't really get hacked. I mean, I guess you could lose your map packs or something, but whatever. You start a new character, you pick up a rifle, and you start shooting stuff, right?
yeah. I think the thing with the PlayStation Network, if that ever happened again, I don't think Sony would survive. It was such a big deal when it went down, and like you say, it rumbled on for weeks and weeks and weeks. Even they had this sort of head guy from PlayStation, apologizing, doing a lot of bowing and a lot of apologizing to the customer base. It was a pretty dark period actually for PlayStation, but I don't think that'll happen again. I really don't.
And that was just you can't play your games for a while, and maybe you lost your identity theft. But I mean, I've had credit cards canceled because retailers got hacked, and they had my credit card in the past. I mean, that's happened a lot of times. But imagine if that happened to your Diablo characters, and you lose all your characters, or you lose your items, or something like that. I mean, that's a bigger deal than just you can't play your game for online for a few weeks.
But then that also means, I mean, could it possibly mean that some of the data that they actually will handle your character stuff will actually be stored locally? There will probably be some difference between the way that the characters and data are stored between the PC and the PlayStation version, probably just for ease and for the exact same reason that you just cited there. So, like I say, it's too early to tell how they're going to do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's more data stored on the PlayStation version than there is on the PC version locally.
Yeah, I mean, people have figured out ways to hack, consoles. They have like add-ons and stuff. But I mean, obviously, it takes all kinds of hardware as well to get into the computer system. And I mean, it's not a PC. It's not meant to be writable and everything. So I think it's much easier to keep it secured, more or less.
Yeah.
And of course, they're going to have offline play, so there'll be some way to either export your character or create single player characters or whatever. And in theory, those could be hacked if people really care that much.
Well, look at it this way. Gamers are an inventive bunch. If there's a way to do it, they'll find a way to do it.
But I mean, I'm not suggesting that the PlayStation Network's going to get hacked the first week of the game and everyone will lose their characters or something. But just I mean, it has happened in the past. So it's and, whereas BattleNet has not been hacked. Although of course we had the first like 4 months of Diablo 3, it was nonstop. I'm getting hacked, my character's getting hacked, and that just kind of vanished all of a sudden. They kept saying get authenticators, and people were finally kind of trying to figure was this the end user or was there actually a problem, a vulnerability on Blizzard's part?
Well,
And I don't know if there's ever any answer to
I
that.
mean, obviously, I'm following Path of Exile for the Path of Exile site, but they've had the exact same problem as Blizzard had in the last couple of weeks with people, claiming, oh, my account's been hacked, blah, blah, blah. And I was talking to Chris Wilson about this, and he was kind of saying, look, 99.999% of this is just people using passwords that they're using for their email client or whatever, and it's been phished.
Yeah.
But unlike Blizzard at the time, the Path of Exile guys actually jumped straight on it, and within 2 days they put the coin lock system in, which we talked about on the Diablo site at the time when all this was kicking off. Which was,
Yeah.
if someone from an IP comes in that's an unknown IP, then it would lock your character down, and no one could do anything with it, and it would send you an email, and you'd have to unlock it. Well, they've kind of put that in straight away to stop the snowball effect, which is exactly what happened in the Blizzard. It's like you say, all of a sudden one person says it, then another 10 people are saying it, and then 100 and so on. You just didn't really get a picture of what was really going on.
Yeah, we talked about the whole coin lock thing. That was in Rift, right? It was the
Yeah,
first game that did that properly. And Ellie, you guys had a Rift site for a while, and Ellie was talking about that. And it seemed just so logical and obvious, and for some reason Blizzard never did it. They have these authenticators that, they sell, which are pretty cheap, and you get them at BattleNet or you get them at God, what's their convention? BlizzCon.
yeah.
But, that's obviously a pretty foolproof thing if you have that. And you can do it for free if you have a smartphone. So, but I mean, for what a lot of one of the conclusions, like you said, the Chris Wilson said, Blizzard kept posting stuff by their tech guys saying every single case we've investigated, it was somebody who had crap on their machine. They had a keylogger or a Trojan or whatever. And one of the things that people were pointing out is that a lot of people just had WoW accounts and had these keyloggers on them for 20 years or whatever. And all the hackers were waiting until Diablo 3 came out and they had accounts worth hacking again because they didn't care about the WoW stuff or whatever. And so they were just basically sitting there with these time bombs on their computers, and once they finally had a Diablo 3 account that was worth hacking, hey, there it goes.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. It'd be interesting actually to look back at the time to see how many people were actually WoW players that got the free copy of the game that were actually complaining about being hacked.
Yeah, well, probably all of them, because WoW players are evil and deserve what they get. Well, that's not right. We
Ooh.
like Panda games. So another point is that the other major controversial issue that people have been arguing about a lot is have they been doing the console all along for Diablo, and is that why the game sucks? And you poked me to do an article about this last week, and that was kind of I didn't really have any conclusions on it going in, but I was kind of looking at the examples of the complaints. They just all seemed very much like Mad Libs. It's like, everything sucks in the game because Jay Wilson, and then it was because of the RMAH, and then it was because of Bashiak, and then it was because of Bobby Kotick, and now it's because of the console. And it's like people were just sort of fitting the evidence to match whatever their current hate was. Oh, it's all console. That's why this is simplified. That's why the item system wasn't great or whatever.
Okay, I have to admit that when they changed the skill interface over, to how it is now, the first thing that came to mind was going, "Oh, this will work on a joypad."
Yeah.
It was just so designed to be able to like use the D-pad and just flick through the stuff, use the select button, and I still actually don't really like the interface as it is just now. I think it's like overcomplicated for really what it needs to be. But having said that, now having seen what they've done on the PlayStation interface, I genuinely don't believe that was the reason for that change. I think they thought that the new skill interface was the right way to go and it was better.
Yeah, I wrote about that in the article I did on that, and I kind of was thinking what you said, and Ellie commented on the podcast, last year when they first did the change, or yeah, it was actually last year, it was during the beta test, saying this looks like it's something for a console. And maybe that will be convenient, but as they pointed out in the new stuff, they're having to redo like every other UI in the game for the console. The paper doll's gone, the belt interface is gone, the health and the mana display is totally different. So it's not like they had every interface in the game set up a year ago to work with the console. Every other interface is being changed and completely being redone. It's not like they dumped the skill. If they dumped all this stuff a year and a half ago and now suddenly it's all perfect for the console, you'd be like, okay, this is obviously something they did for just the console. But every other interface still has to be changed, and this one didn't. And the other thing is that they changed how all the skills worked, and they took out the rune
Hmm.
stones. So they had to put a new interface in that could show you the skill and all of the rune effects for every skill on the same menu. And you couldn't do that when you've got, 25 or 28 skills times 5 rune effects. You've got, 100 and something things on the screen. If you had tried to put it all in the same interface the way they had it previously, that just would never have worked.
Yeah,
So they had to do something to put the skills on different pages so they'd have each page would have all the different rune effects. And they've repeatedly said with Diablo 3 they don't want a lot of text, they don't want a lot of clutter. We have these simplified tooltips. You have to turn on advanced tooltips manually, all this kind of stuff. So I mean that is consistent with their overall design scheme. And you may hate that design scheme, but I mean it's not like it's something totally out of place with this one game feature.
it's not that I hate it. I just find it.
Yes, you did. You
No, I
hate it. I can
didn't
tell.
hate it. I just thought it was a bit over. It's kind of like over confusing.
Well, I don't especially like the current skill system. When we say the new skill system, it's all people have ever known unless they were playing in the beta test. So it's not really new, but it's just these big pop-up windows that cover like the whole screen just for like each individual skill, and you have to click through
Mm.
these 6 categories of them and stuff.
I mean, it makes sense when you
But
start
I
using
think it
it.
sucks. I don't think it's the console that's to blame for it. Is basically my point.
No, no, I don't think so at all either. I think the shots that they put out is evidence that basically I think that no console had no part in that change whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm just looking over the notes of the stuff here. Um, yeah, so the other kind of one of the major complaints about the overall sort of simplification of the game. Like people are saying, the item system is too simplified, or the skill system they don't like how it works, or the monsters aren't complicated because they don't have resistances anymore. And again, you can say, okay, this is the console's fault because they're making it a simple game for console players. But it seems to me that they made the game they wanted to make with Diablo 3. You're free as a player to dislike their design decisions and to say this is simplified, it would be better if it were more complex. But I don't think you know, there's correlation between console, but I don't think there's causation.
No, yeah, I agree. I think there was a pretty much decision made that effectively, okay, we need to make this accessible. I mean, I think that's probably the best word for it. And
Or the worst word for it, depending on your
well,
perspective.
yeah, I mean, and I think they've stuck with that all the way along. I don't think they kind of, if you go back to all the BlizzCons and panels and stuff that we sat in, none of that was really evident. It was never really talked about, which is why, when the game hit and when the beta hit, everyone was like, "Oh, well, hang on a minute, what's this?" Because it was kind of never really touched on. Everyone was just expecting this great new Diablo game.
Yeah. And they got it. Oh, wait. Well, some people think it was a great new Diablo game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it appeals to some, probably maybe some of the old school guys may not like it quite as much because it wasn't what they were expecting. But I think it has done exactly what they aimed to do with it. And I genuinely do actually believe that the game will get better over time. I think it's just the only problem that we have right now is the actual speed of development, speed of updates. But I do think they're listening, and I do think we will get closer to what we're kind of looking for.
Well, it's gotten much better since launch. I mean, people who haven't played it don't know, but I mean, I enjoyed it a lot more than I did initially. Well, initially it was awesome, and then about a month afterwards, it was like, okay, there's problems. But I mean, I kind of made a quick list of like the main complaints about the release version of D3 were things like bland itemization, Inferno was too hard, unbalanced skills, there wasn't enough end game, etc. All those things have been addressed heavily in patches and improved upon a lot. But there's no reason they would have made those things. They wouldn't release the game like that, saying this is how it should be on a console. The console is going to be 107. The console is the game right now. So everything they fixed and upgraded and changed is going into the console version as well. So it's not like they had some whole different plan for what the console will be, and it's going to be all simplified and easy and
No, I
different,
mean, I
and that they're going to make the PC version
I think
change.
it's the other way around. I think they take the PC version and then they change that to simplify it. They're not. based on what's already there just now. They haven't designed the PC version based around what they want to do with it.
That would be funny if we actually get the console launch and it's all different and simplified, and people can finally be like, "Okay, I guess I was wrong." Oh wait, no one would ever say that. Well, you can be sure there'll be a lot of introspection and soul searching and people making really responsible apologies to Blizzard if they prove to be wrong in their suppositions on this point.
I mean, what are your? I mean, what do you think? Do you think it's a good move to put it out? And the call, do you think it's a good timing? I mean, is it now the right time to announce this and put this out now? Do you think it should have been done later?
Well, if it was done sooner, it would have been really bad. I mean, like last, June, July, August, when they were really having a lot of problems and the game wasn't satisfactory and they were furiously rushing out patches to improve things. I think that would have been a real PR debacle. It's like, okay, you PC gamers are on your own and we're just going to crank out the console version now and cash cow that. So, I mean, I mean, they obviously have been working on the console all along and they were probably planning on having it kind of debut at the Penny Arcade Expo here for a while. But when they were going to actually announce it, they felt they had to wait till the game itself was in a better state.
Mm,
And obviously after the 107 patch is a better time than before the 107 patch.
yeah, yeah. I think I don't know. I actually kind of didn't expect it this soon, to be perfectly honest. I kind of expected something to maybe be announced maybe at the end of the year, just to give more time to get some of the things sorted out that still need to get sorted out. Because I don't think I don't know. Oh God, dare I say PvP? I'm not even going to say it.
Which might be fun on the console. You can sit on the couch beside your friend and screen watch and stuff. It's like you're playing Halo or something like that.
Yeah, well, as long as the other guy's got a blanket over his head, like in your screenshot.
Yeah, everyone seemed to like that one. So the high-tech split screen technology there. So the funny part might be is to be a little cynical about their reasons for when they're doing it, as you were just saying. We're going to get a Diablo 3 expansion, and most people expect they're going to either announce that or at least if not announce it, then they'll certainly be showing it off at BlizzCon in November this year.
Do you think that?
And
I don't think that.
I'll be shocked if they don't. I mean, I mean they had all this pre-game stuff. They wanted to go 18 months for expansion packs, and BlizzCon is 18 months from release. I mean, much less it's not going to be on sale by then, but I mean, if they haven't even announced the damn thing by then, StarCraft, it took them almost 2.5 years for the expansion. StarCraft 2, I mean, after they'd said 18 months. So, I mean, they're always slower.
So, do you think that like the game will pretty much stay as it is just now, with maybe some tweaks, and then announce the expansion, or do you think they're going to keep going hell for leather to improve it over the next sort of six
I,
months?
well, they really haven't done that many. The last patch made a lot of big changes, which was like 4 months ago at this point. But that's when they really toned down the difficulty of Inferno and added monster power, so you could do your custom difficulty levels.
Yeah.
And those were huge game changes. There are no huge game changes in 107. I mean, there's some buffs to a couple of characters, and they added the brawling, but that's not really what we were hoping for from PvP, most of us. I mean, it's an important patch. The most recent one is. I mean, I'm playing a monk mostly lately, and he got a big buff in the patch, so it certainly made a difference to me. But it wasn't anything. It was just a content update. There was no new game systems. There were no major changes.
Mm.
They didn't add any in-game content. And the main, it's not sort of the biggest complaint still going is that you can only really farm Act 3 because it's the only one with enough monster density. The other acts, you feel like you're wasting your time
Mm.
because there's not enough stuff to kill. And that's if they're going to do anything else big before an expansion that adds like a whole new act and new characters and everything. It seems like I mean I can't see them putting in like a whole new item system or vastly overhauling that or adding like new gyms or anything until an expansion. But they could certainly do something about the monster density or add some new dungeons or something to give players more areas to play in the end game.
Okay, here's something that really bugs me, right? And I don't, I know that the Blizzard always planned to do the auction house as a way to monetize the game. Okay, that kind of went down like a lead balloon for a lot of people, but people are using it. What I would like to have seen was them to actually release paid DLC. I just don't know why they didn't do that.
Be like more
Yeah,
dungeons or what would you put in it?
yeah.
Sparkle ponies? What do you
Sparkle
want?
ponies. Well, extra zones. I'm not saying like huge massive levels, but extra zones. I mean, people would have paid it. I mean, if you paid like 5, 10 bucks, you think about what you pay for Call of Duty maps. Like $10 or whatever it is. People would pay it. I just don't understand why that hasn't been done.
They obviously thought the real money auction house would be a much less painful way They thought, I guess people, I thought for a long time they would be doing what you kind of what you said, like there'd be like a BattleNet Plus or something, and you know you paid your $5 a month or whatever, and you get like a new dungeon every month, and there'd be some special levels, some special tiers of items that you couldn't find otherwise. Because that's really what they did with Diablo 2. You know, it was free, but with closed BattleNet, they had a lot of rune words that were only available in closed BattleNet, and a lot of uniques that were only available there. And it was just a whole different play system, and it was to encourage you to play it on BattleNet with secured characters. And I'm not sure why they cared about that because they didn't make any money out of doing it.
Mm.
But it just seemed to me they would be doing that all along with Diablo 3, and I could envision stuff like tournaments or special dueling things they would have had. And you know they'd be pushing new features out for that, and if you didn't want it, you could just play the base game for free, you know, like a freemium thing almost.
Yeah. Well, what you've just
And as you just said, they never did it, and nobody knows
what
why.
you've just described as pretty much Path of Exile.
Yeah, and that seems like a pretty logical approach for MMORPGs. I mean, or you know ARPGs, this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'd like to have seen it, and I think they'd make quite a lot of money from it. I think it would have kept the game fresh as well, and I think it would have kept people excited for it. But obviously, they're going down the expansion route. But I don't know, going back to whether it's going to be announced at BlizzCon or not, I'm not entirely convinced. I'll probably be wrong.
I'm not entirely convinced either, but I mean, it just if they're going to keep anything near their initial time frame of 18, 24, even you know 36 months after release, you got to be announcing it. You know, they're not going to announce a game and then release it 3 months later. You know, it's always like at least a year for Blizzard, right? Usually 2 or 3 years.
Mm. Well, my predictions are usually right, so I'm going to say that right now because I think I've got most of them right so far.
Well, guessing longer for anything Blizzard does, it's hard to go wrong, right? I mean, that's the eternal joke, and it's usually true.
I, I don't know. It really depends how much of development time they're spending on an expansion right now. I think that's really the question. Um, Obviously, with Jay going, I don't know. I don't know if they found a game director yet. I just don't know how that's going to play out. And obviously, I mean, the PlayStation thing for me, the PlayStation stuff is what the stuff that they'll be touting at BlizzCon.
Quite possibly, but they're already being if they're showing that already now. I mean, next month they're showing it. I mean, what else are you going to show? It's you know, BlizzCon is 8 months from next month, so
Yeah, but it's different. You know, BlizzCon's different from Pat. You got the die-hard Blizzard fans at BlizzCon. I think they're going to want to stack that place full of PlayStations and just have people playing it on that.
I think it'll be out by for the PlayStation by then. I mean, who knows? But I mean, they say they want to release it at version 107. I mean, they don't want to release it a year after the current version of the game itself, right?
Well, actually, I'm trying to think. When is the PlayStation 4 coming out?
I have no idea. I didn't even know there was a PlayStation 4 until the news came out on this. What's the control thing? There's some kind of a touch control they mentioned. Can
Yeah,
you
yeah. I
describe that for people
haven't,
who don't
I
follow
haven't looked at it
consoles?
too much, generally, because I'm trying to keep away from console stuff at the moment. Although this is kind of like overlapped into it because of the Diablo stuff. But you know, based on what I think, you know, usually you're going to get a console getting released around holiday season. So you're looking around sort of October time, November time. Um, so to me, with BlizzCon being in November, beginning of November, I just think they're going to be showing it off there,
Possibly. I mean, the first BlizzCon was just choked full of StarCraft Ghost on
which was
console, which
good,
you
by the
know
way.
we yeah, and that really worked out well. It's a great project for them. It's good they spent all that time
Yeah, it
developing
was
it.
good.
Oh wait, it
I
never came
never
out.
understood why they canned that. It was really good.
I know it could have been out for 4 years by now, and people would be ready for a
Okay,
new
that'd
one.
be StarCraft Ghost 3 by now.
But my theory with the console and the expansion is they're not going to release the console and then have an expansion like a month later. You know, they want to put the console out far enough before the expansion pack. And obviously the expansion is going to be simultaneous. They're not going to have an expansion for the PC and then 8 months later it's out for the console, right? There's no way that would ever happen.
Why not?
That would because then all the console players feel like second-class citizens, which of course they are because they're on a console, but you don't need to rub their faces in that, right?
Yeah, I mean the timing thing is quite interesting, really, if you think about it. Which was just what goes back to what I was saying earlier. You know, are they going to do that much more development now on Diablo 3 when the console version is going to be coming out? And like you say, they say that 107 is going to be in tandem. So are we going to be on 107 for the next sort of 6 months?
Like Diablo 2 again.
Yeah, well,
Yep, Diablo 2 was on 109 for 3.5 years, by the way. People to forget that I see these comments about how they're slow with patching Diablo 3. It's like Diablo 2 had the same version for 3.5 years.
I think that I think
From like '01 to '04 was the same version of the game. So Anything they're doing is faster
But I
than
think
that.
Diablo 3 is a different kettle of fish this time. I don't think they can do that with this. Otherwise, the community's just
Yeah, there's
gonna
definitely
like move on.
yeah, there's much higher
Yeah,
expectations.
absolutely.
That's so, but I mean, my whole argument is against the rose-tinted glasses, where people are like, "Oh, Diablo 2, there was so many patches." Like, not really. No, it was quite a few.
Yeah, I
They were pretty
remember
rare.
trying to update news and stuff during the dark years when there was like no news, then all of a sudden,
Yeah, I was. Yeah, that's what we had 47 columnists writing stuff about like stuffed animals and and RPGs and Lord of the Rings movies and stuff because there was no game news for literally like 8 months at a time. There wouldn't be a single blue post or anything. Imagine that today, It's just there's very different expectations for what games should do today than back in the
yeah,
old days.
absolutely.
God, we're so
I
old.
have such an old fart.
Can you still walk without a cane and a
No,
crutch?
I
Because
got
I
one of those
can't.
Zimmer frames on wheels.
Yeah, it's horrible. Okay, I think we're rambling a little here. So, do you own a console, and will you be buying Diablo 3 to
I
play on it?
own every console. Would I buy Diablo 3 to play on it? Actually, probably not.
Did you ever play Torchlight on the
No, I
console?
just, an ARPG on a console just does not appeal to me at all. It just doesn't.
Yeah, somewhere Bobby just popped a blood vessel in one of
I
his
mean,
eyes.
it was really interesting last week. I mean, it's just the control system that lets the console down, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, when they announced,
But you've never tried it, so how
I
do you
mean, I
know?
do play console games. Not,
But you didn't play Torchlight or Diablo on a console. And those are kind of the ARPG
yeah, because
options, right?
it just seems so backward. It really does.
But if all you knew was thumbsticks, then maybe you think the PC version was backwards.
No, no, sorry. I mean, okay, here's a really good example. Last week, Bungie announced their new game called Destiny. Okay, and there was a quote from one of
Yeah.
the developers there saying that basically their gamers have moved on and people no longer play shooters with their keyboard and mouse. And I was like, what the hell? What's this guy on? I mean, seriously, you can't play a shooter effectively, as well as you can on a keyboard and mouse. So I think that rule just applies across the board.
Well, he's a developer who makes games only for Xbox, so I think he knows which side of the
Yeah,
bread
but you
his
just
butter's
don't
on, right?
say idiot statements like that. You just don't.
It's almost like Blizzard talking about how there was no DRM implications to the online only effect for
Yeah, but didn't
Diablo
you know there
3.
wasn't?
Of course not. Not a single one. Okay, so any final thoughts, Paul?
Um,
You're eagerly awaiting the console and you're not going to play it and you don't care.
yeah,
Other than
I'm not
that,
going to play it on the console. Well, I probably will play it on the console at some point, but I'm not going to go out of my way to play it on the console. Going overall, though, I think it's a good move. I think it'll be good for the. I actually think it'll be good for the game, if anything else. I think once the two games are kind of in sync, I think we're all going to benefit from it.
yeah, I wonder about the current pace of things. If they have a console team and an expansion pack team and a current, ongoing development team, that's a lot of, fracturization of things and a lot of different projects going on, which could certainly mean slower development in the short term for new patches. But as you say, if they've got another 5 or 8 or 10 million customers on the console, they want to keep happy, and they want, we're getting the games are the same versions, and they want to keep cranking out the content. That should be good for the PC gamers as well and the Mac gamers because they're working harder to get
I,
new
I
patches out and new
I agree. I
expansions
just don't
out.
think you can look at this negatively. I think it's going to benefit console gamers who want to play it, and I think it's going to benefit PC gamers who at least know that the game hasn't been abandoned. You see it all the time. Oh, Blizzard don't care. Usual stuff. You read it in all the posts on the official forums and stuff. But I think it's really positive move, I'm kind of hoping that it does happen sooner rather than later. Certainly as soon as the PS4 is released, and we'll see things start to, the PS3 and PS4 development running in tandem with the PC, and we're going to get updates, and the game's going to improve.
Yeah, we should pull that quote of yours. You just said something I think you can't look at it negatively. We should just pull that and then try and find any circumstance that applies to PC gamers or Blizzard fans or Diablo players.
What negative?
You said you can't look at it negatively. I'm like,
Oh yeah,
yes they can.
of course
You
you
can
can, but
look
you've
at
got to be realistic, and I guess,
There's
you
another
know,
one. You're 2 for 2. You're 2 for 2 on the most inappropriate comments ever made about the Blizzard gaming market.
like
You got to have faith in Jay Wilson. Hey, there's a third one.
Jay Wilson's God.
Yeah, exactly. But he's currently making Titan and the smashing fan success Diablo 3 was, or perhaps not.
I don't hold that much hope for Titan. I don't know. Just not because Jay's doing it. It just doesn't appeal to me at all. Not that I know that much about it
Well,
at all, but I don't know.
well, you just mentioned the new Bungie game. That's apparently what Titan is, or what most of us seem to think it's going to
Well,
be.
I don't know. Look,
Sort of this mixture of smartphone games and applications, and it's a real game somewhere in there, but you don't need to bother with that too much.
well, based on the way that people are today, who can't have a conversation with anyone without looking at their smartphone every 1.5 nanoseconds.
Oh my God, we're so old, dude. This is getting worse
I
and
know, I
worse.
know.
Back in my day, we talked in person, didn't use our cell
No, I used to
phone.
use cups and two pieces and a piece of string between them. That does the job usually.
Yes, well, that still does the job. You're in Europe and they don't have much technology there, so you have to make it do what you can. Okay, we're rambling. I do not own a console, and I will not be playing Diablo 3 on it unless it's at BlizzCon because I don't care. But I do like the PC version, and Paul doesn't, and he's
Well,
a
just
bad
because you
person.
said that, I'm going to buy you a console and a copy of Diablo 3 and send it over.
Yeah, so I'll get right on that. If I look at about 3 years from now, at the rate of things going, maybe Blizzard will send us review copies because now we're friends with Blizzard and they send us swag and again.
Yay!
Okay, you've been listening to the Diablo podcast. We'll be back with one hopefully next week covering 107 and some more current game stuff and not just consoles. Thanks to Rush for
Thank
filling in
you.
tonight. And you can get us on diablo.incgamers.com. And Paul does a regular podcast, video podcast. They can see you
Yeah,
talking,
that's
right?
out to tomorrow's Wednesday, so it's out every Wednesday. And in fact, we're actually going to start doing it live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. GMT. So if you want to watch us making idiots of ourselves, you can always tune in for that. So we're going to be doing a lot more stuff live on twitch.tv/IncGamers, so keep an eye on that. And I'm just going to give another plug here as well that we've got a Steam group up and running as well. So look for IncGamers.com on Steam and come and say hello to us on there.
Okay, thanks for listening. And this is the Diablo podcast, and we will talk to you later. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Moo.
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 Moo.